everyone. I'm Brittany, the host of the Shed podcast and a health coach here at Shed. One of the biggest concerns we hear about GLP-1 medications is muscle loss. And the truth is, it can happen if you're not taking the right precautions. So today we're talking with Shed Health Coach Coach Gage about what really causes muscle loss, how to prevent it, and the simple steps you can take to stay strong while reaching your weight loss goals. Coach Gage is a certified personal trainer, nutrition coach, and CrossFit L1 instructor with a minor in nutrition science. And he is here to break it all down for us today. Welcome, Gage. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. I think the first thing that comes to mind on this topic is I think a lot of people associate taking a GLP-1 medication with kind of that gaunty looking look, so to speak, that a lot of people are talking about. And it can be really scary to think, if I take a GLP-1, am I going to look like this? Am I going to experience muscle loss that we are often seeing with, celebrities or, maybe friends or family that have taken these medications. And so first question for you is, can you first explain what this kind of gaunty phenomenon type of thing is and why it happens?
Yeah, just kind of going over that gaunt look, just making sure I'm on the same page, kind of on those news headlines with some celebrities and things. It's kind of those sunken eyes and sunken cheeks and just kind of that like sucked in look where they're kind of like missing what seems like their old face. It's a different look. So with that look, that can be caused to really any extreme weight loss, any extreme calorie deficit weight loss, which could be done without a GLP-1 medication. So sometimes people will associate that it's a side effect of the GLP-1 medication, but that can be a way to, or it can be something that's seen just with extreme weight loss, not even associated with GLP-1 medication. So, with extreme weight loss, losing fat and muscle, you'll lose it in all parts of your body. So you can see it, even in your face, kind of as an extreme. If it happens very quickly, then it can kind of show that look. And that's kind of what can be a reason why it would happen.
Yeah, I think something that a lot of people don't realize is that the gaunty looking look or that intense muscle loss isn't necessarily associated with GLP-1 medications themselves, but more so with that weight loss or more so with fast weight loss. And so I think whenever we talk about GLP-1s, what we at Shed really want people to know and why we offer, health coaching alongside our medications is there is a right way to lose weight. There is a way to be able to maintain some of this muscle mass and lose weight in a way where we're not also experiencing the gaunty look or that muscle loss. So my question for you is that preventable? And if so, how do you prevent that?
That's a great question. It is preventable with the steps you can take, being adding in protein to your diet and with resistance training or strength training to mitigate muscle loss or even building muscle while you're in a calorie deficit while you're trying to lose weight. Because targeting weight loss is the goal with a GLP-1 medication, but trying to mitigate that muscle loss and target your the fat loss is kind of the goal when it comes to GLP-1 medication.
Okay, so protein and strength training were the big takeaways from what you just mentioned as far as things to keep in mind to preserve some of that muscle loss or muscle mass and to really focus on the fat loss instead. And so I want to dive into protein first and then we'll kind of dive into strength training after that. My first question in terms of protein is, why is protein important for maintaining muscle mass?
Yeah, protein is essential. It's the foundation. You've probably heard building blocks, with all the different processes in your body. Your body goes through kind of ebbs and flows of breaking down and building up. So when you're adding in protein and building blocks and calories, you're building up or recovering from, day-to-day activities and then breaking down throughout the day by moving about, doing exercise, really just existing. Your body's going through a lot of different processes.
How much protein should someone taking a GLP-1 be getting each day? Or do you say like each meal? What is that recommendation?
That's a great question. It's very individual based off of activity levels and based off of kind of goals, right? So it's a very, very different recommendation per person. It's very important to listen to your body as you kind of go through your process with weight loss or muscle gain or exercise, whatever your goals are. It's important to listen to your body and kind of take account and listen to kind of the cues it's giving you so you can kind of make that goal or make that kind of pillar as you kind of go through. We talk about 0.8 grams per kilogram as kind of a pillar to look to as kind of like a baseline as you're kind of shooting for. But like I said, it's very individual. You could need more based off of recovery and your goals as you're kind of going through your weight loss.
Could you give me some examples of what a protein forward day looks like?
Yeah, I think with protein, it's very important to first start out with the sources that you enjoy. So leaning into those and then trying to find more diversity throughout the day. But trying to find those kind of protein focused meals and snacks, evenly spaced throughout the day so that you get multiple kind of bouts of protein throughout the day. Maybe a protein forward focused day example would be Greek yogurt with some berries in the morning for breakfast, maybe some eggs. A snack could be some hard-boiled eggs and a piece of fruit or some jerky. Lunch could be a chicken salad. A dinner could be some stir fry or some tofu, a grilled meat, and like some veggies, maybe a little bit of wild rice on the side. That could be like a protein focused day of eating.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's great to kind of give examples so that people like Greek yogurt, I feel like a lot of people don't even maybe know that Greek yogurt is high in protein, which is a great way to start your day. So, yeah, I appreciate those examples. Where does one start with adding in more protein into their diet? Do you just kind of like dive right on in and go by that recommendation that you gave earlier? Or do you have any advice or a method for those that are just starting out with focusing on protein?
I think the biggest thing is find where you're lacking. Maybe one meal or one snack that you have frequently that you find is very low in protein and trying to substitute or add in protein during that time. A lot of times we'll see it's very common for people to have a low protein breakfast. Most breakfast foods are not very high in protein. So those foods that you're kind of naturally inclined to in the mornings, just the ones that are kind of marketed or advertised towards breakfast, are not super high in protein a lot of times. So trying to find that time where you're maybe not getting a lot of protein and then just adding it in, it can be a substitute or it could just be an addition. You could find snacks. It's always important to focus on whole food sources, but if you really are struggling with appetite and, trying to get those in, protein shakes can be a good addition to, add in that protein throughout the day.
How do you feel about protein shakes, protein bars, all of those kind of like ready to drink or like grab and go type of things? I know so many people in today's age are so busy. And so sometimes it can be easy to just like grab that protein shake or grab that protein drink whenever you're trying to really hit some of these protein goals. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a great question. It's always important to focus on whole foods first. Get those whole food sources of protein, whether it be, quinoa, tofu, eggs, dairy, fish, chicken, turkey, lean sources, beef, pork, whatever your favorites are, get those whole food sources first because there's a lot of benefits to those in staying full and satiated, but also the nutrients associated with those foods. But yeah, adding in the supplemental shakes and bars can be very helpful, especially for those on GLP-1 medications that might have a lower appetite to stomach or to make sure that they're hitting their protein goal each day because it's very important to maintain the muscle mass as you're in the calorie deficit. So, supplementing in a shake as a snack, at the end of the day, if you realize you're running low on your goal is not a bad idea when it comes to trying to hit that protein goal. A lot of times we'll recommend, our protein powders or shakes, we have here with our supplements, but looking for ones that has minimal added ingredients, no added sugars. There is a hierarchy, some are better than others, but hitting that protein goal is so important. So adding in a shake or a bar can be very helpful.
Yeah, I like that you really framed it as protein bars, protein powders. They really are a supplement. And so, whenever we're taking a supplement, that means that we're maybe lacking in some area. And I think it's really important to try to hit that protein goal with those whole foods. But, like you said, if there is a hole within your diet, it's totally fine to have that protein bar to kind of supplement there. I know I worked with a nurse practitioner who saw patients, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every single day, and her schedule was just packed. And so she really focused on like eating while she was at her desk, her breakfast, her protein packed breakfast. She could take a little bit of a lunch, so she got her protein packed lunch, and then she would get home for dinner and make herself a nice whole food protein packed dinner. But she needed those snacks in between her breakfast and her dinner throughout the day. And she was just like packed with clients all day that she had a little protein bar in her white coat. And so every patient that she would like come out of the room, she would take a couple bites of her protein bar and then go into that next patient room. I've worked with teachers who it's tough to like be eating in front of the kids. And so how can I just kind of get things here and there? So, yeah, it really does depend on who you are, what you're kind of consuming throughout the day in terms of protein, what your schedule looks like, and those sorts of things. Let's dive into strength training since that is that second thing that we really need to be focusing on in order to maintain muscle mass when on a GLP-1 medication. What qualifies as a strength training exercise that will help build or at least maintain lean muscle mass when thinking about weight loss or achieving weight loss? I know Pilates is huge right now. I'm a big yoga fan. Of course, adding in lifting weights, we all think of strength training as like going to the gym and lifting weights. So, what exactly qualifies, and what are some options for people who are exploring strength training?
That's a great question. I feel like strength training in the gym is getting a lot of buzz right now. It's getting a lot of popularity. So it's cool to see that people are finding the importance of having that resistance for, muscle mass, but bone density. There's so many benefits, metabolic health. So focusing on those movements that have resistance, right? That's kind of the key word. It's going to be difficult. It's going to have muscular tension, but it could just be a body weight exercise. I think a lot of people get discouraged because they've never been in a gym before. And it's a very, unique, new, difficult experience. And so as you're kind of getting more accustomed or used to some of the movements, starting with your body weight is plenty. Doing some squats, standing up and sitting down from a chair. You can do a push-up against a wall. You can do push-ups on chairs. And so just finding those movements where you're using your own body weight as that resistance to start. And then gradually incorporating, if you do have that gym membership, it is, lifting weights, adding in dumbbells or barbells or just weights, cables. There's lots of different machines in the gym that'll add that resistance that will help, give your body the signal to hold on to that muscle mass when you are in a calorie deficit. Pilates is amazing. Yoga is amazing. A lot of times those exercises are not going to have the sufficient amount of resistance to build or maintain muscle, but they are very important to incorporate, especially if you enjoy them for movement and enjoyment in life, to get mobility and to longevity. And it's all, they have so many other benefits, but they might not have that kind of resistance training benefit of muscle mass.
Yeah, I love that you align so well with the conversation I had a couple weeks ago with Coach Gina, and she was really explaining like how to get started with building a consistent exercise routine. And again, it aligns so well with starting a consistent strength training schedule. It doesn't have to be this specific thing that you have to do and everyone has to do this in order to achieve their goals. It is about exploring, and it is about finding what you enjoy, what's convenient for you. I know me as a mom to a little 2-year-old, like 30-minute workouts in my living room is the best that I can do, and that is more than sufficient, right? So we have to kind of integrate these things into our lifestyle and what we enjoy in order to stay consistent. And starting out with body weight is like a great start, knowing that eventually you're going to build more and more strength and you're eventually going to get to, where you want to be. How often should someone be doing resistance or strength-based workouts to help preserve lean muscle mass? What does that schedule look like?
That's a great question. The recommendation is about 2 times a week. And with that being 2 times a week, it's nice to spread them out. Full body exercise 2 times a week. You have some days in between to recover and recuperate, and then kind of push it again so that you have that, full capacity to continue with your, program or whatever it is that you're kind of following with your plan.
Love that. Super doable. Couple times a week, and even starting out with 1 day a week, and then with the intention of like adding on to that second day.
I think one thing that I try to reiterate or to bring importance to is exercise being an adaptation. You're kind of sending your body a signal to adapt or change, right? You could be focusing on getting faster with cardiovascular health. Your heart or your lungs are going to be working better. Or there could be the resistance or the strength aspect where you're telling your body, hey, I want to build some muscle. I want to hold on to this muscle. I want to get stronger. And then everything outside of that exercise is really what is the body's adapting to, recovering and recuperating. And so with that stimulus, it's starting out with the minimum effective dose, right? And so the least amount that you can do to get the most benefit. So 1 day a week, if you're coming from zero, is going to give you that benefit. Ride that out as long as you possibly can. And then incorporate 2, because if you jump to 2, you're still going to get the benefit, but then you have to go even more than 2 after a certain amount of time. I mean, it is longer, but just thinking forward thinking, future forward thinking, try to get that minimum effective dose and then build up slowly and gradually and just keep riding the benefits or the gains, they say.
Yes, I love the concept of minimum effective dose. I know that was so important for me on my journey. I used to have such this like all or nothing type of mentality when it came to exercise in general, but I think strength training in particular. And something that I hear from clients all the time whenever they start practicing this minimum effective dose is, wow, I'm actually able to be consistent and show up, week after week because I'm not so sore because I just dove in, to maximum dose. Instead, I really took it slow and, titrated up in a way as you continue to build on top of that. So, love that you brought that concept up, and super important to think about as you get started with strength training. Okay, last question for you. For someone who is starting their weight loss journey on a GLP-1 or other weight loss medication, what are the most important things to keep in mind as they start their journey? If you could give us just a little bit of a summary of what we talked about today.
Yeah. Maybe just like 3 bullet points for today. Keep it simple. Um, Hit your protein goal each day. Try to break it up into those kind of intervals throughout the day, protein forward eating, trying to incorporate that into your snacks, adding those additional bouts into the spots you might be lacking, those meals that might be lacking. Second would be resistance training, starting to incorporate wherever you are, meet yourself where you are. Brittany hit on a good point of that kind of starting out where you are and then building back up. So minimum effective dose, it could be 1 time a week, body weight, and then as you kind of incorporate more, try to shoot for that 2 times a week and spread out so that you have some time to recover in between, hitting all muscle groups throughout those exercises. Really don't need any more than 30 to 45 minutes at a time. It's not too much necessary there. And then last is just being consistent with it. So finding that minimum effective dose for you. There's a quote that I tend to repeat a lot, and it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. The consistent small good habits are going to compound and overtake the occasional great ones. One really good day of eating or really good exercise workout is not going to do as much benefit as really small, consistent habits and things that you kind of lay the foundation to.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. Well, thank you so much, Coach Gage, for joining us today. That is it for the Shed podcast this week. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. We will see you next week.